The crankshaft is now in position. Just try and turn that down. And that's it at the other side. The clutch actually goes onto this section here. As you can see in the book, there's a little rubber washer that goes on there, just there. So we'll deal with that later. Okay, I've just left that there now, and I cleaned the inside of this casing. I already had it blasted on the outside, and I must try and get this bearing out. This bearing is 6200, and this one is 6202, must be put back in there. This is the one that I took out. It's spinning okay, but just for the sake of it I'm going to change it. And this is the seal at the other side. I'll have a look at the numbers there now in a second. Now this bearing is normally difficult to get out. It seems to be working okay, but I'll change it anyway if I can get it out. I'm heating the area of the crankcase, putting the bearing. You have to heat it, put the bearing in. Okay, that's the bearing installed there now. When you heat it and the seal at the other side, it makes it much easier to put them in. And then when it cools down, it tightens up on them. Right, the next thing to do is to install this pinion here, and I've attached this piece that was damaged in the other engine. Next thing to install now is to install these gears, and there's a washer on the bottom there. Now is to install these gears and this washer at the bottom here. It goes on like that, and it goes in there like so. Right, those gear pinions are in place there now. The next thing to install is this gear change element and this new gear system, and that goes in there, and this goes in here like so. Now they're in position there. So what I have to do now is I have to attach that mechanism there. That's the next thing to do. Right, there's a spring and a little what you call it on the end of it in there. So you have to remove this pin which goes through the center of this, and then you have to try and get it in. This is the way it goes in. So you've got to push it in like so and try and get this in here at the same time. Right, I've finally got it on there, and you must put this bolt back with these little circlips on it, and that's that. Right, the next project in the engine is to install a gasket. Now, it's recommended to install them dry, but I'm actually going to put a small bit of this stuff that you get in a tube. You can actually use it instead of using one of these. It's flexible, so I'm going to put a small bit of that on. It helps to attach the gasket to the casing. Right, the sealant I'm using is Dirco. It's for sealing all sorts of gaskets and sealants. I'm going to put a small bit all around where the gasket is going. All around there. That's the sealant applied there now. And I'm going to put on the gasket. See how it helps to keep the gasket in place as well. Right, I've applied sealant now to the other side, which will be the face of this gasket when I turn it over. So you have to turn it over like so, and then you must insert this section from underneath like so, and you must bring it up, and then you can seal it together with the casing bolt, which is this bolt here. This bolt goes through there. So that's it. Right, this is actually where the casing bolt goes here, like so. And at the other side, there's a nut goes on there with a spring washer on it. So I must get the two halves together now first before I can do that. It's just out of popping together the casing bolt there now, and you can see the gap is after closing. I had to put a bolt in here to keep the gasket here in the right place. It was slipping into the crankshaft. So that's how it looks now at the moment. And we'll put on the other side. Right, the next part to do is the clutch mechanism. This is the first piece to go in, like so. That goes down onto that grooved shaft there, and it goes down into the seal. So sometimes it goes on easily and more times it doesn't. Right, that's that circlip in place there now. That has to be there. So as I said previously, I have to put in the clutch plates next. The metal divider and the other clutch plate. Then this cover goes down over it like so. So that's the clutch mechanism partly installed. Piece to install now is this wheel, which goes on like so, and you push it down and it engages. Okay, and in this section there's always a spacing washer. Always. Right, the next section is to put on the unit that holds the clutch in place, and for this we need a special tool. So the first piece to go on is this bearing. Then the spring goes on top of that. That cupped section goes on top of that. 2 spring washers and a bolt. But as you can see, I can't bolt it in place at the moment because I have to compress the spring, and to compress the spring you need this spring compressor, which goes like that, and you thread a bolt down through here and a bolt down through there, and that compresses the spring down. So if we look at this, we require bolt number 5 and bolt number 7. So now we need bolt number 5 and bolt number 7. Number 7 and number 5. Right, I need to thread these bolts down now into the engine, like so, which will pull the spring downwards so that I can get the spring washers and the nut on. I've tightened the bolts down now onto the engine casing, so the 2 spring washers go in here, and then the nut. So now we can tighten the nut. I have to get a ratchet now to tighten that. The bolt is on there now. I ratcheted it down in place like so, and now I can take off the unit for depressing the spring. It only tightens down flush or maybe slightly below it. So now I must remove the depressing unit by undoing the 2 bolts and putting them back where we know they'll be found for later. So I'm just taking off the last bolt there now, number 7, putting it back in its place, and we're finished with this. So that's that. The next operation is to put on this clutch cup, which goes on like so. It should go down. Sometimes it can be difficult, number 1, to get it off, and more often than not to get it on. So there's a groove there and a groove there which sits down around that, and then this special washer goes on. I'll try and get this down now first. It needs a bit of force. A slight tap with the rubber mallet and it's down. As you can see, it catches on that there. Right, now we've got to put in this special washer. Now this is difficult. It has to go on like that, and you need a flat screwdriver, and I damaged this one, so I'm after putting a little groove in the middle of it, which helps to put it into place. Now I wish I could leave on the camera, but what I'll do is I'll try and put it on, and then I might be able to put the camera somewhere that will show me doing it. And there now, and I'm going to put it on temporarily. It's difficult with one hand. Right, one lip of it must catch here, this section must come out there, and you must try and prise the other section on. Right, I've got it on. You have to fiddle around with it. What you need to do is have the engine at the angle like it is at the moment, which is like that, and then just put it in position as best you can and catch it on the lip at the bottom side here. Try and keep that as close to that as possible and push this one down with the screwdriver like this. I use this little piece with the groove in it, and you must push it down to get it into place. Okay, I'm going to use this cover, double check it against the one that was on it, which is all cracked. Okay, looks the same. Right, I need to clean it off first, get it to look something like this. Okay, the bearing for that casing is number 15, which is bearing 123210, and that's a 6201. So 6201, and how do we do with the seals? The other two seals there. Right, I've just applied the Durco flexible sealant onto both, and I'm now going to put the gasket on. And then I'll put the other down like so. We need to do a bit of tapping now to get it in place. Right, I've just put it in place there now with the mallet, and try to use the rubber end of it. Okay, I must put in all the bolts now and tighten up the whole engine. So, as per the diagram on our bad piece, we'll put number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. All these guys over here. Right, I've tightened up all the bolts there now, and hopefully there shouldn't be any leaks. What is bothering me at the moment is this. I would have imagined that there should have been a woodruff key area on that, and there isn't, because that's where the sprocket goes, and there's normally a woodruff key similar to the woodruff key here. Right, when I was disassembling this engine, there was an extra washer that I was wondering about, which I found here. Now, that washer shouldn't be there at all, and I've just realised after putting the engine back together again that this sprocket goes on there, and the sprocket requires a woodruff key to stop it from spinning around, otherwise when the engine is running this will just keep spinning. The woodruff key stops it from spinning. There's no woodruff key on this, so therefore I have to take off this casing again and see. I've checked the dismantling video and it looks as if I've put it back the same way, which I think I have. It's just that this doesn't have a hole for a woodruff key. So I've checked another 3-speed engine there now and it has the woodruff key on it, so I'm going to have to take off the casing and possibly several other things as well to be able to get this out, to put in one that actually has a woodruff key on it. When I talk about woodruff keys, this is what a woodruff key is. These little fellas, they're not quite half moon, quarter moon I suppose, but they actually come in two different thicknesses, right? This fatter one is actually for these ones, which is this particular gear item. The lighter one is for there. You can see that it's much narrower. Right, I had to take the whole engine apart to get it out, and I've just noticed there was, I don't know if you can see it, but there was a woodruff key in it, and it's completely worn flush with the thing itself, so I'm going to try and get it out and I'm just comparing there. This is the gear shifter from a 2-speed. This is the gear shifter from the 3-speed. So you can see, number one, this diameter here is smaller than this, so this won't fit in there. So I'll have to try and find one of those. I haven't been able to get out excuse me, I haven't been able to get out the one that's inside there. Okay, finally I have all the bottom section of the engine back together, and this is for the woodruff key. This is what was missing. If this isn't there, and if you don't have a woodruff key, the chain sprocket will just keep spinning. Oh, so I'm thankful that I'm back on track. Right, I decided these things are 25 euros to buy them, so I decided to tackle it and see if I could actually get the woodruff key out of it that was flush. As you can see, it was flush with it. Well, it was, so I drilled some holes into it and eventually it loosened and came out, so I can replace it back on the engine now that I took the other one out of. The next thing to do now is to install the circlips on the rear braking mechanism. This is it here. So one goes on there like so. That's that. And then this goes on probably this way, but it's easy enough to take it off anyway if it's the wrong way around, but I think that's the correct way to do it. And the other circlip goes down there. The second circlip in place there now, so that's the braking system sorted. Now is go back and put on the clutch mechanism for rising the clutch. To put on that lever there now for pulling up the clutch cup, you have to put in this pin. Goes through there, and there are two circlips, one on either side, that need to be installed to keep it in place then. Right, that's the clutch arm in place, and we have a bit of a working clutch. Next thing to do now is to put on the piston. I've cleaned up the piston that was in it, the rings and everything look good, so I'm going to reuse that and putting in new retaining clips alright on it. I'm using the existing pin that was in it as well. So I have to get the piston down over the rod, and put this bar through and put a little clip on either side. So we'll attempt to do that now. The easiest way of getting a piston on is to actually, you need to heat the piston so that the pin goes through, and when the piston cools down then it tightens to keep it in place. So all I have to do now is to install these two clips at either side. Now the piston is on, and the next thing to do is to put the head down over it. There are special calipers or a tool of some description that you can actually press in these piston rings, but I don't have that, so I just use my fingers and fiddle with it until I get it in. So we'll try that next. Next thing to do there with the head is to put on the gasket. I'm actually going to put a small bit of flexible sealant on it as well. I'm just putting the flexible sealing compound on it there, and now apply the gasket. It also helps to keep the gasket in place. So I'll actually put some sealant on this here now as well, but I think what I'll do is I'll actually put it onto the gasket itself, which might be easier. Okay, the piston is down there now. Sorry, the head is down. Next thing to do now is to put on the next gasket here, and then this top head here. The gasket in place, and I've used some flexible sealant underneath it as well, and I'll do the same with the top section. I just need to clean off the blackness in here from the previous use of the engine. The next thing to do is to apply the top head there. I've put some flexible sealant on it, and down she goes. And you must put bolts on here and double spring washers. The next thing to do now is to install the plug here, and I'm using the plug that was actually in it. It's a Bosch plug, which are very good quality plugs. This is a W8 DC made in Germany, and the gap for the top there is 0.5, which I've just set. Now I was putting the plug in there, and I began to realize that there was an issue with the plug that was actually in this engine previously. I measured from the top of the piston to here, and then I measured from there to there, and I found that this electrode here would actually be just about touching the piston, which possibly could actually damage the piston. So whoever installed that piston previously didn't know what they were doing. So the important thing about putting in a piston, which a mechanic that I rang a while ago told me, was I bought this piston from Berthold Krippel in Germany, who is the NSU supplier of parts, and you can see from the spark plug that it's much shorter than the other one. And that's a good thing, because that's where the piston is inside my barrel. So when the petrol enters the chamber, it's got to have some place to go. And with this plug here, I don't think the plug would actually fire, because it would be saturated with petrol. There's space here above the piston with this plug, so that it can fire to form the, the spark can push the piston back down again. So this is the spark plug that I'm going to use. It's a W7AC, you know, it's a Bosch plug, but it's made in India. Okay, I've just installed the plug there now. The next thing to do is to get to this section here, which is the magneto. So this is the flywheel. Now I must go and get the electrical unit that goes inside here. I must try and find it. Okay, the next thing I'm doing there now is I'm putting on the chain sprocket, and you need to install the woodruff key, which catches on that there so that this doesn't spin around when the chain is going. Okay, I'm actually putting 2 wave spring washers on it now, and then putting the nut on it and tightening it up. That's the sprocket now fully in place. Okay, the magneto is next, and I managed to track it down, but I had to do some remedial work to it. I had to put a new contact on here, and I had to put a new lead on as well. So that will be going on the end of it. And this little rubber thing goes in there, and the cable comes up through it and the wire comes up through it. Now a lot of the time they just they fall out, and it doesn't have to be there, but it just makes the thing look neat. Okay, it sits in there like that. The spark plug cable comes up the hole. This unit is attached there with a bolt, and the wire coming from above, coming down through here, attaches on there from the lights. So I have to put a bolt in there now and a bolt in there. These little fellas here. The other thing as well about this is that there's actually a mark on the side of the engine. I hope you can see it there. Sometimes my zooming goes out, and there's a mark on this unit as well, so you can actually turn it around to the mark. Now more than likely, if the timing is off or whatever is not working correctly on this, I'll actually get an auto electrician or a professional mechanic to have a look at it just to see and get it going. Right, that's the little unit screwed on there now. There'll be a wire coming down here from the lights which will be attached to that, and that's the little black, I suppose you would call it a grommet. I must now put on the top head unit here onto this here. Okay, that's all finished there now, and I've actually got enough of cable to do another engine, so that's even better again. Right, the next thing to do is to put on the flywheel. So in the flywheel you can see that there's a groove there. That groove goes over the woodruff key. That's what holds it in place and stops it from... Yeah, just put in the bolt there with the spring washers behind it, so that the piston is going up and down with good compression anyway. Okay, that's it for that engine. And the last thing to do there now with that is obviously fit it to the bike, but I must attach the carburetor, but the carburetor needs a few bits and pieces and cleaning up, so I'll deal with that. And finally I've attached the side casing. I must get a longer slot head screw for this to keep it in position. And I've attached the other one at the other side. They take little slot heads countersunk screws like this, so I must get one for the other side.